Mike, I want to talk about the top 10 because people are always asking us about the top 10 of our drafts. Of course, it was CMC, Christian McCaffrey, that went first overall last year. If you picked late in the round, it was a different story because there were some good values. If you're going into 2025, who do you feel like you can trust the most in that top 10 picks?
Yeah, I mean, we're coming out of the gate here, and you don't really even need me. Adam Schefter just said it, and he said he's the most plugged-in guy. He knows what he's doing. Jamar Chase or Bijan Robinson are the way to go at the top. I think the guy maybe I trust, the guys I trust the most, we'll say, two of the receivers, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, have both been so terrific. Even last year with the quarterback concerns for Jefferson with Sam Darnold, he was terrific again. At running back, honestly, there's only one guy I really feel like I can trust, and that's the guy who was the number one scoring fantasy running back from week 6 on last year. It wasn't Saquon Barkley, it was Bijan Robinson.
Sure, yeah.
A really high floor in terms of touches, and the production was outstanding. I think he's the next great running back. He already is in fantasy football, but I think he establishes that and keeps it going in the future.
Yeah, 61 catches last season for Bijan, who's going into his third year. He is a do-everything running back. Stephania, that was Christian McCaffrey for so many years. There are some people who are just flat out on Christian McCaffrey. I took that guy number 1 overall, never do it again. His current ADP is around 8th overall. What do we make of his health? What's the latest? Because at last check, he's like the only 49er still practicing right now.
He is. I mean, all of the trust is in Christian McCaffrey right now. And, you know, last year he was slated to start. He was the number 1 pick overall, and all of a sudden, surprise scratch week 1 after he'd been resting during training camp and rehabbing this bilateral Achilles tendonitis. He then went on to miss 8 games, comes back, just getting up to speed by week 13, and he falls in that snow globe game against Buffalo and tears his PCL. Now, anybody who has watched Christian McCaffrey knows his work ethic and his dedication to rehab, and also that he probably has a chip on his shoulder about how things went last year. He came back to OTAs with 0 restrictions. That registered in my book. Like, he didn't want any time off in the spring. He's been participating in everything all the way through. They have rest days built in for him appropriately, rides a scooter at camp when he's not practicing. So everything is primed for him to have a good season this year. Look, you can look at it 2 ways. Glass half empty, he only played 4 games last season. Glass half full, he only played 4 games last season. So less beating up on the body, fresh legs coming into this year. And he has had career years after coming off of injury before. So, you know, the years he hasn't been hurt, he's played 16 or 17 games.
I can see it now. It's going to be week 2. We're going to be sitting on this set doing our running back rankings for week 2, and Christian McCaffrey, number 1 running back again, because why not?
He might be the number 1 running back going into week 1. And by the way, their schedule, very favorable.
Very favorable.
They have some roster holes to work through.
And they have some injuries, and he's a pass catcher. Yep. And if you have PPR league, what do you like but a pass catching running back?
Let's talk the other side of the age coin here, Damien, because some people scared off by CMC's age. Ashton Jeanty, the fresh new face out of Boise State. What should people know? How excited should they be about the Raiders' 6th overall pick in this year's draft?
Should be very excited. I mean, you're talking about the most explosive running back to come out of college football in quite some time. Yep. I mean, we saw him rip so many 20-plus yard runs at Boise State, and now he's going to a team with the Las Vegas Raiders with new head coach Pete Carroll. The one thing we know about Pete Carroll, he's a culture changer, and the other thing we know, he's going to run the football. He's played defense. He's going to run the football. And, oh, by the way, Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator. He's very innovative as far as designing the run game. And so when you have a guy that you draft 6th overall, okay, he's going to be the guy for the Las Vegas Raiders.
And we're back. Every year there's some new major names in places that are relevant for fantasy. Justin Fields is a potential upside pick at quarterback now with the New York Jets, Jets, of course, because of his rushing prowess. Another former Steeler has changed teams. It's George Pickens. He's playing for the How About Them Cowboys. He gets a major upgrade with Dak at quarterback, but he now has to play second fiddle in terms of targets to CeeDee Lamb. Davante Adams, no longer with his BFF Aaron Rodgers. He's a Ram with Matthew Stafford and Puka Nacua. Adams is being drafted in the 4th round of drafts right now. And Evan Ingram may be suited for Sean Payton's Joker role in Denver. The Broncos didn't have a lot of trustworthy pass catchers last season, so he could be a consistent force at tight end for you in your fantasy lineup. All right, back now here with Mike and Damien, and Liz Loza's here. What's going on, Liz? How are you?
I am great. It's wonderful to be at the desk, and it's wonderful to be kicking off another fantasy season.
It's going to be an absolute joyride ahead. We cannot wait for it. Let's stay there in Denver. Are you optimistic about what's going on between Evan Ingram and Sean Payton? He has loved these jokers during the course of his career.
I am having such great vibes with it. I know that Evan Ingram is coming off of a career low effort, but I think the change in scenery should really boost his production because he figures to eat, being deployed as he has for most of his career as a supercharged slot option, a wonderful compliment, by the way, to a possession receiver like Cortland Sutton or a speed threat like Marvin Mims. And I'm not going to pretend like Evan Ingram has ever excelled in the red area of the field necessarily, but in PPR-friendly formats, this is a player who's a great value as one who can flirt with upwards of 80 catches and 700 yards.
I seem to remember a guy by the name of Jimmy Graham having back-to-back top 2 finishes among tight ends and fantasy points under Sean Payton, who's Evan Ingram's new coach. So
they didn't have a single tight end with 50 points in fantasy all of last year.
The Broncos did not.
The Broncos did not. Yeah.
I could probably throw a name at you right now that might be an NFL name and might not be an NFL name, and you'd be like, I think that guy played tight end for the Broncos last year.
It's actually a fun game.
There are some Lucas Troll. He was actually a Broncos tight end last year, but there are some random names that took some snaps for them at tight end in 2024. Let's talk about Deebo Samuel, Mike. He gets traded across the country. He goes from the Commanders to the Commanders from the 49ers. How are you projecting maybe their number 1 wide receiver?
Yeah, maybe. I'm still projecting as if Terry McLaurin will be their number 1 receiver. I expect him to sign and be there and be their top guy. I think there could be an opportunity here for Deebo, but the problem is he's been so hard to trust. He's still yet to play a full season in the NFL. And you remember the big seasons, right? He had the 2 where he was a top 12 fantasy wide receiver in San Francisco. Well, the other 4, he was outside the top 25 in fantasy points per game. So he's really been all over the place. That concerns me. And by the way, this is a fast-moving offense, a good offense, obviously, with Jaden Daniels. However, they were 24th in wide receiver targets last season. I'm not sure that goes up a lot because Jaden is still going to run the ball a lot, and they like their tight ends. Obviously, Zach Ertz had a big target share last season. So I'm kind of, sometimes guys go too early, sometimes guys go too late. I think he's kind of just right where he's going now as like a wide receiver 3 or a flex.
Let's go to New England, Damien, a place you once called home during your playing career. Super Bowl champion Damien Woody, by the way. Only 8 games for Stephon Diggs in Houston last season, tore the ACL. Now he's in New England. What's your outlook for him as a Patriot and maybe Drake May's number 1 target?
He will be the number 1 target. And you talk about a guy in Stephon Diggs who he's 9 straight years, he's been a top 25 wide receiver in this league. And so when you look at this Patriots team, they've been, bereft of talent. Like, they haven't had anything. Now you enter Stephon Diggs, who's obviously the number 1 wide receiver for Drake May and company. And listen, Drake May, with all the lack of talent around him, actually excelled in New England, in a rough rookie year. So when you add a Stephon Diggs and some of the other weapons, I think it'll be a big boost.
By the way, here we go again. Another season of FF Now, and Damien steps in and steals my stats. The stat guy here, top 25 in fantasy points per game 9 years in a row. Here we go again, Damien. You can't get a single stat in on this show.
Over here in the cozy confines with Stephania Bell and Stephania, I say we just continue the Stephon Diggs conversation. They already teed it up at the table, only played 8 games last year. What's the latest on his injury?
Well, the fact that he was cleared to return to practice almost immediately during training camp, very good sign for his progression. Had a clean ACL injury by all accounts. You like to hear that. But the thing is, we know that wide receivers, running backs often take a year of playing before they really return to their prior level of performance. And that's the challenge for fantasy players is it going to be volume? Is he going to be able to be that perimeter guy for them? When it comes to touchdown metrics, yards, things like that, we know there's a dip in performance the first year back. So looks like he'll be healthy. He did not play in the preseason opener, but it appears he's on track to start the season on time. Just don't know what we'll get out of him right away.
I mean, obviously the Patriots really hoping that he can come in and help Drake May. Obviously they drafted Kyle Williams in the 3rd round as well. So hoping for good vibes on Stephon Diggs and that update from his injury. All right, Stephania, it feels like the situation's a little hazier, though, down in Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin. Do you have any updates on what we're thinking with him this year?
This is really tough because I think what people need to keep in mind is that the injury is more severe than they probably imagine. He suffered a fracture dislocation of his left ankle in week 7. People hear fracture, they think broken bone. That should mend pretty well. But when you have a dislocation, it's a violent injury to the joint. Besides the fracture, there's the risk risk of soft tissue damage. There's the risk of cartilage injury to the joint. Those are the things that you're concerned about. We know he had to have a second surgery. We know that they drafted a wide receiver in the first round in McCaffrey. And we don't know exactly where Chris Godwin stands. Now, they said they're happy with his progression. We want him to heal and heal well. Can he? I anticipate he can. When will that be, though? That's the question. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses time to start the season, even if he's cleared to practice, which, mind you, he's not doing right now. He's on the physically unable to perform list. Once he's cleared to practice, he's still got to build back up to practice tolerance, to game tolerance. And then we have to see, how does he move? How's deceleration? How's planting, pivoting, cutting on that ankle? What kind of volume of work can he handle? So if you're the Buccaneers, you signed him to a 3-year deal.
Yeah. If
you want to maximize his career, you don't want to rush him back. So I wouldn't be surprised if they ease him back, even if he looks fantastic. It's probably going to be a slower progression, I think, than people would expect.
Yeah, these wide receivers in Tampa will be an interesting situation for fantasy managers. Chris Godwin coming back from injury. Mike Evans is like 43 years old.
Hey.
And obviously we drafted Emeka Egbuka in the first round, so we're very excited about that. Oh, by the way, Jalen McMillan is still there, and he was great for fantasy managers down the stretch too. So hopefully we get some good updates on Chris Godwin as we get closer towards draft season. Finally, Stephania, anytime that we see a Q next to a player's name when we're drafting, especially when it's like a top 10 player, right? But we're seeing that right now with Justin Jefferson. Do you have any updates on his injury?
Well, it's a hamstring injury. It was called mild, but the thing about mild hamstring injuries is you can always make them worse, and that's what the Vikings do not want to do. So I'm not surprised that he's being limited right now in practice. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw very little of him up until the season begins. No indication that he'll miss any time. A lot of confidence coming out of the Vikings. By the way, great medical staff. Shout out to the Vikings. I expect them to bring him along in anticipation of being ready to week 1. The most common injury that has the most common rate of recurrence for injury is among hamstring strains, lower extremity strains, but hamstring in particular. You don't want to see that happen during the season. That's when they need him, not now. So I don't have a lot of apprehension around him until we get close to the season. If there's something suggesting he's not ready to go, then maybe a little more concerned. But the fact it's mild, the fact they're resting him now,
love that.
That's all good.